Hello and welcome to Figure It Out. I'm Dan and I like to colour shit in. Today I'm colouring in Leo and Donnie from the Ninja Turtle set from the Zaz Studios Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description below. Everything was printed on my Elegoo Saturn S. It's old, but it still keeps on printing. I use Sunlu standard resin. I do prefer ABS, but I can barely afford this hobby as it is. I'm sure many of you can relate. Once printed and cured, I sand, file, grind, glue, fill, sand, prime, fill, sand, etc. until all pieces fit, with gaps that I can accept. I do a final prime with Createx Autoborn Sealer for everything that isn't clear resin. The clear resin gets hit with a transparent automotive plastic primer, and everything is ready to paint. It's turtle time. I like to start with the bases. All the bases of these models are basically the same. They consist of concrete, bricks, pipes, and vents. I'll use the same colours across all bases, so in the end they all look like they go together, because they do. I start by sloppily covering the bricks in a couple of coats of brown earth by Jo Sonja. I'm not worried about patchiness, as this will add variations to the bricks. Add a wash of gold oxide, also from Jo Sonja, for more variation before overbrushing with Vallejo Orange Brown. An overbrush, from my understanding, is like a heavy, wetter, but not too wet, dry brush that gets into the shallower detail, while still leaving the deeper details, or something like that. I don't really know the technical mumbo jumbo. I just like making things look pretty, so I apologise if my terminology isn't quite right. Unlike most things in life, I try really hard not to overthink this. I dry brush some Vallejo Light Flesh for some highlights before giving it all a burnt red wash, lightly dabbing away some excess from the high points with a sponge. Let them dry, and yay, we have bricks. I start the concrete with Vallejo Dark Sea Grey, getting into all the nooks and crannies. With some Vallejo Sky Grey, I dry brush over the concrete areas and give all the concrete a weak, transparent blue wash. This blue tinge gives a cool contrast to the warmth of the red brick. I slap some black metallic from the Vallejo Premium range over the vents, pipes and rebar, blacking it out first. I paint all my rust across the models the same way. I start with filthy brown, focusing where I think moisture would build up or run, like the pipe joints, valves or the steam holes. Then, with a small sponge, I add parasite brown and transparent wood grain to be like the dirty, rusty water that surrounds it. I colour the valve thing red using many coats of Liquitex Naphthol Crimson topped with some transparent red for some extra pop before covering everything in oil washes. My oil paints are just cheap shit from our local crafting store. As I run out of a specific colour, I replace them with a better quality oil paint. Not over the top, super expensive quality or anything. I'm just making washes that get wiped off after all. However, better quality oils have better and more pigment, meaning you need less paint for a better wash. For the concrete, I mix some blue and black oils and slap it on. I slap just straight black over the rest before adding a brown oil mix over the entire thing. My brown oil is an eyeball mix of burnt sienna and burnt umber. After at least 40 minutes, giving time for the oil to cure slightly and truly stain the paint underneath, I wipe off the majority of the oil, leaving it in the cracks and crevices. I'll leave the oil 2 to 3 days to fully cure before varnishing with Micador Matte Varnish. This is an alcohol-based acrylic varnish that is safe for both oils and acrylic, making it perfect as an intermediate coat between your oils and acrylics. And that is the bases done. Now for all the little bits and bobs that go with the bases. I start with Leo's accessories by dry brushing gunmetal silver over the vent stacks and gluing them in place using some icky sticky CA glue. For the little window pieces, I black out the clear frame before adding an orange brown base and transparent wood grain wash. I then add a little blue-green oil to the glass portion to give a slight tint to the resin once it's wiped off. In the meantime, I will start the radioactive power box by overbrushing it with bone white from the game color range. I then dry brush from underneath with the game color squid ink. This will give a nice warm orange shadow once I cover everything in yellow. But before that, I quickly come from the top again with the bone white, blending the pink down so only the deeper shadows are pure pink. I slop on some transparent yellow. Black out the backboard, wires, screws, dials, and the radioactive symbol on the side. And added bone white where I wanted it to be red. I'll quickly wipe off this window oil. I add transparent red and transparent green to the dials, turtle sign, and orange brown and transparent wood grain to the backboard. I use black and gunmetal silver to add damage around the edges. I add rust to the vent stacks and power box before covering all these little bits in both the black and the brown oils. Wait 40 minutes, then remove the excess again. I let the parts cure before cleaning the contact points with some IPA. I give them a little scratch over and glue the parts in with the icky sticky. That's Leo's done. I start the aircon box for Donnie's base by brushing on some chainmail silver over the fan shroud and wall brackets. I use black metallic for the pipes and the outer ring of the pizza sign. I overbrush bone white onto the aircon box. However, I was unhappy with the coverage and swapped over to good old deck tan from Vallejo. I also used the deck tan for the pizza sign backing. Between the sign backing and the outer ring of the pizza sign, there is a little rim. I paint this with metallic purple from the Vallejo Premium range. I start the writing by using the side of my brush with pure white and skimming along the top. This takes way too many coats. I take a break from the pizza sign and start weathering the AC unit with some black and chainmail silver along the edges. I add rust, remembering the wall behind the box. I add the black and brown oils and remove after 40 minutes. Off to the airbrush booth to finish the pizza sign. I sprayed with white first, making where I brushed on earlier even brighter white, but also laying a base for the back glow. I used transparent yellow, orange, red and green for the colored lights. This would have been better had I also had neon colors. Unfortunately, I have none and I'm broke, so this will do. With some more white and the side of my brush, I go over the tops again to give it that glowing effect. I add some rust to the rivets and wall connections before adding oil. This time I use a white oil for the sign faces. I'm actually not sure it did much, honestly. I'm not even sure what I was trying to achieve. I probably had a little too much of my meds, or something like that. Anyway, once the oil is removed, the bases are done, and we move on to the big green fighting amphibian. acrylics. I start at the booth with the turtle skin and some Vallejo black green. When I paint skin of any colour, I tend to use a thinned out paint and do my first coat over the whole thing. Then my second coat, I go around the sides and the top, leaving it darker underneath. And then with the third coat, I do just from the top. And I will do this for each colour I use. This isn't a set in stone rule, however. If I see I need adjustments, I will make them. But this seems to work generally. So when I was happy with my black-green coverage, I swapped to Vallejo Intermediate Green and Donnie because he's easier to hold. I was supposed to do a violet-red base coat to start as I normally would for skin. Unfortunately, I forgot. So I tried to make up for it using the wash method to bring more interest to the skin and make the veins pop. Like so many parts of this project, I shouldn't have bothered, or at least made the washes stronger, as most of it disappears in the next step. Back to the booth, I spray the turtle's lats, inner biceps, neck, and lower face with Vallejo dark flesh so they look like battle toads. To add some lime green over the top. Still wanting more interest in the skin, I mixed Viridian blue and purple red oils to make a dark or oil wash and spread it over the skin. Waited 40 minutes and removed. Guess which idiot didn't realize purple cancels out yellow? Yeah, so now I'm gonna add that back in. First, they need to fully cure for a couple of days before I seal them with a Micador varnish. While they'll cure, I'll start on the armour by brushing some Vallejo Old Gold around the edges. And then I use a black metallic on the surfaces. I colour in the ropey stringy things with Vallejo Medium Blue. Then, with the side of my brush and some Vallejo Andrea Blue, I go over the tops for a slight highlight. The tiny turtles get some green metallic from the Vallejo Premium range and some panel liner. I cover the armour in black oil, wait and remove. The leg bandages get a Vallejo Medium C grade base coat, followed by a Vallejo white grey dry brush. I use a thinned down dark flesh for the disgusting turtle nails, followed with sepia ink and transparent wood grain. Thinned down and splodged on using my finger and a tiny sponge to dab it all off until they look like gross nails. I then thin the sepia and the wood grain down further and start randomly adding it and patting it off the bandages. First the sepia all over, as it has a yellow tint, like sweat. Then more towards the foot with the wood grain as dirt or mud. I thought I'd make the turtles a bit gorier by adding some blood. First, I add a drop of black in some transparent red and thin it out. Something like 1 drop black, 3 drops red, 16 drops water. I add this with a sponge where I want some blood. This will be the outer edges that are already drying. I also try to think of gravity. I then add a 50-50 mix of transparent red with water, adding that to where I imagine the impact point, generally top center of the previous step. Lastly, I add straight transparent red in the middle of that. The knee and elbow pads get a raw umber base coat. Followed by a brown earth dry brush and a light flesh dry brush for the highlights. An itty bitty bit of metallic black for the rivets, and the buckles get black and chainmail silver. I coat them with a transparent wood grain wash to finish. For the shorts, I use a black base coat and dry brush the details out with Vallejo grey green. I start Leo's loincloth thingy with medium blue as the base. Next, I dry brush with Andrea blue and coat with a transparent blue wash. This is the same process that I use for all the coloured ribbons for each of the turtles, just with different colours. Before I get stuck into the shell, I add the yellow back into the skin with the dark flesh. I have this paint quite thin and slowly build it up using my fingers and sponges to break up the edges, leaving a softer transition. I base the front and back shells along with the belts with a raw umber. Next, I dry brush the front shell with orange brown, then a little bone white over that. I dry brush some brown earth onto the rear shell with orange brown lightly over that before some light skin for some highlights. I cover both shells with a transparent wood grain, dabbing away the excess. I go over the belts with brown earth dry brush. Any paint from the previous steps just adds to its raggedness. I then dry brush lightly with the orange brown and light skin for highlights. With Donnie, I did the belts at the same time as the shell. I black out all the metal on the belts, ready for some chainmail silver and a little panel liner. Using some of the black green, I lightly dry brush over the skin, trying to catch all the little bumpy bits for a bit more interest. The bandages and pads on the arms were given the same treatment as the legs before I blacked out the blue ribbons, armour and the sharp pointy pizza cutters. I colour the armour as before, however I use the Tamiya panel liner instead of my usual oil wash. Paint the handles of the pizza cutters with metallic black, then medium blue, avoiding the diamonds. I also paint the medium blue over all the ribbons. I give the handles and ribbons a dry brush with Andrea blue. And a coat of transparent blue to just the ribbons. Can't forget to add some more blood. For the pizza cutter carrying device on Leo's back, I once again start with raw umber followed by a brown earth dry brush. Light flesh for highlights and a transparent wood grain wash. I paint the bandages as before and black out the bits I want metallic. I add my metallics and some panel liner. Then add a little blue for shits and giggles. I airbrushed the sharp pointy ends of the pizza cutters with Createx Silver Metallic. For Leo's portrait, I spent a little more time with the dark flesh, really getting it to the point I was happy with. I actually did this on Donnie too. I used thinned down transparent red for the lips. The line over Leo's eyes, I first used some deck tan, followed by the Naphthol Crimson, then transparent red. For the whites of the eyes, I use highlight skin. Pure white makes it look like crazy eyes. The eyes on the turtles are really hard as they are set back into the head. I have absolutely no good footage of this happening, sorry. I do plan on roping my wife into helping me in the future. I really struggle to sit still and in frame. I give Leo blue eyes, starting with a medium blue, then Andrea blue, leaving a thin ring of the medium blue, and then just a little bit of sky blue on the lower third of the Andrea blue. I add pure black for the pupil and a couple of pure white dots for a little shine. The eye mask I treat the same as any other ribbon. Finish the sharp pointies by blacking out the hand end and the back of the sharp side before adding black metallic and some panel liner. I dry brush a little silver just over the sharp edge to brighten it up. And Leo is done, mostly. Add a little bit later. Donnie is pretty much the same as Leo, so I won't go over him entirely. I want to point out that I rarely measure my thinning ratios. This gives me a little bit of difference in how colours look across different models, but it can help them still look like they belong together. But you do have to be careful when doing this. Donnie's bandages are an example. On my first pass, my sepia and wood grain washes were way too strong. So I just dry brushed the white grey back over them, thinned the washes down a bit further, and restained the bandages. No big deal. For Donnie's ribbons, I swapped the medium blue with hexed lichen from Vallejo Game Color. I replaced the Andrea blue with Vallejo purple. And the transparent blue with violet ink. The handle of Donnie's thwack stick is painted with hexed lichen. Then purple on the high points. A metallic black shaft with metallic purple and violet ink on the bumpy bits of the thwack stick. Apart from the spanner, which was dry brushed with a chainmail silver, the rest of Donnie's gadgets are dry brushed with metallic black. Then chainmail silver for a little highlighting. I add a little transparent red here and there over the gadgets and some green ink for that retro screen look. Cover them all in panel liner and the gadgets are done. The goggles get the same treatment, except I add a small white dot to where the lenses are before covering in a transparent smoke. A little deck tan for the goggle straps, followed by the naphthol crimson and transparent red. Colour in the middle of that strap with grey-green, and dry brush the already blacked out headset band with that same grey-green. I used the panel liner over both bands. I start Donnie's teeth with some dark flesh to even out the colour and get out the green that was left in there. With a thinned out transparent red, I give Donnie some lips and let it get into the cracks of his teeth. I use highlight skin for his teeth, leaving little pink lines for separation. I paint Donnie's eyes brown instead of blue. Any 3 browns will do, just make them a dark, a medium and a light. I did want to show here how I try to get the eyes looking like they're facing the right direction, using a mechanical pencil to mark where I think the pupil should be while I have the head on the model. And of course, we add more blood. I don't put as much on Donnie, just a little to his right knee, left elbow, and left hand, as he would be keeping the dreaded foot soldiers away with his big thwack stick. At this point, I decide to add blood to Leo's pizza cutters. I found this clear Elmer's glue at the store and thought I'll give it a whirl for some extra thick, gloopy blood texture. It doesn't string like the Uhu, but it certainly makes for a nice thick blood effect with just a little transparent red added to it. With a toothpick, I gloop this over the sticky outy bits on Donnie's thwack stick and just the very edge of the pointy stabby pizza cutters. I make sure everything I want to be stuck together is, using some 5-minute epoxy. I cover everything with matte varnish, making sure every piece is sealed and protected. I go over all the metallic parts, the toe and fingernails, and the middle of the blood patches to make them look wet with some satin varnish. And I added some gloss varnish to the goggle lenses, the eyes, the lips, and the teeth. Okay, turtles are done. Just before we go to the final shot, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you think someone else could find this video helpful, share it with them. That would be great. Otherwise, let's go to the final shots.